Well, good afternoon. It's Wednesday and welcome back to the shop. So this is an unusual angle that you got me at, but this is on purpose because I wanted to recreate the same camera angle that I used the other day to capture this. Now you'll notice on the speaker, there's a white blotchiness. That's not a reflection. That's actually the pigmentation of this dash is poor there. I don't know, the dash is supposed to be a solid color, but that pigmentation is really bad. So what was the first thing I did? Well, first thing I did is issue a disclaimer. Make sure that whatever you do to your dashboard, you test it first on an inconspicuous spot. So what did I try first? I tried acetone. I took acetone, tried it on the side where you can't see it. It didn't impact the dash, so I was okay with that. And I tried to use acetone to see whether or not that blotchiness was something that could be removed. Well, it wasn't. There was simply no color pigmentation in that area. So now the options I have is to return the dash, but as I said before, unfortunately, I bought this dash 18 months ago. It's been sitting on my shelf for that long. I only took it out a week ago, and I found it was blotchy. So what do? Well, I can't really return it because it's been 18 months, but even if I did, it would be weeks to get a new one back. And if I get a new one back, and I guarantee it's going to be okay. So basically, I thought, let me try to fix it. So how do I fix this? Well, you know this car has a two-tone interior. It's got a dark blue and a light blue. Now, I also have the dark blues, right? You've seen me using the light blues on the spray, but again, I also have the dark. So I thought, okay, I'll get a little bit of the dark blue, put it on a rag, and try to see if I can get rid of that blotchiness. Well, unfortunately, the dark blue metallic actually has too much metallic in it. You could really see it. It was instantly observable. So that didn't work. So what did I do? I used the acetone, cleaned it back off, and I got back to my blotchiness. So what I did is I actually created my own concoction of paint. And by doing so, I used a flat black, right? So that gave me a flat base. And then I added blue to the black in order to get a really rich dark blue. And that is what this pad is. Again, this is a dark royal blue. So I took my new concoction of paint and I simply dabbed it very lightly on top of the blotchiness. Then once I let that set for a few seconds, I took the acetone again and I feathered it out so that it would blend that blue into the dashboard. And that acetone, the great part about it is it actually is able to penetrate this plastic and really bring that dye, because remember my blue paint is a dye, bring that dye into the plastic in order, the vinyl or whatever this thing is, in order to make sure that becomes color safe or color fast. And then of course by using the acetone, if it's not going to come off with acetone, it's not going to come off with anything else. It then blended in really well. So it's feathered in nicely. A little bit of a shine here, but that's just shiny. I'm going to be able to clean all that up. But basically, that fixed the problem. So problem number one was fixed. I got rid of the blotchiness on my dashboard. Problem number two, though, is my VIN. And let's talk about that.
Okay, before we get started on the second part, just wanted to show you, like I said, that blended in really well. So you really can't see now the blotchiness that was there. Secondly, it looks a little darker, but that's because it's still a little wet. Let's face it, I've just done this 10 minutes ago. But secondly, all of these little perforations were actually lighter. And the reason they were is, although this might be a solid piece of dark blue, when they punched those holes, it lightened up the area because I guess the plastic stretched, and when it stretched, it lightened up. So it really looked a little different. So by blending everything in, I've actually kind of darkened those holes up a bit. So that's why it looks a little dark. But if I bend it up to you like that, then you can see right away there's no darkness. It's just the shadows. Now, number two is the VIN. In 1968, they modified the dash pad and actually created a reveal so that when you slip the dash in, this would just pop up on the reveal, and the reveal would just show your VIN number. Unfortunately, these dash pads, because they're both for 67 and 68, they don't have the reveal. Now, the option you have is to cut a slot into the dash pad so that when the dash pad slips in, this can slip up to where it's supposed to be. And you can see you'd have to cut a heck of a slot in it. Now, by bringing this up where it's supposed to be, that trim will cover most of it. So you might get a little bit of hole here. Number 3, I'm going to do all of this without the windshield installed. So here's the little trick I was thinking about. Put the seal in, right? No windshield, but put the seal in. That's going to give you where the seal is going to sit, how far that seal travels down on the inside. That'll make sure that right now the dash doesn't interfere with that seal, because remember what's going to happen is when you're trying to fit this windshield in and you've got to get that seal down, the last thing you want is your dash pad interfering. So this way here now we can see to make sure there's a nice reveal in here so that we don't have interference. The second thing we're going to notice is that I don't remember when I took this car apart, but obviously this trim piece goes in after the fact, and that this trim piece sits on top of the seal like that. It doesn't go under the seal. There's no way this piece goes in between here. So the idea now is we take this piece, we can now fit it so that it does sit on top of the seal like that. We can find all our screw holes. We can make sure this piece fits perfectly, because once we get the windshield in, this piece will go in afterwards. But once it goes in, we can just then drive our screws through. So we have all of this time now to make sure we get these screw holes aligned, we get everything trimmed. We can even test it, make sure the screws go in, and we can bend the piece here a bit to fit better in the corner. So we can do all of that with the seal in place so we can emulate when the windshield's in place. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to now take this piece out. I'm going to start bending it and tweaking it, making sure it aligns. I'm going to make sure that these holes line up with the notches on the dash pad so they align with the screws. And then that way there we can put these pieces in afterwards, and that's how it's going to finish up right like that. Now, we did talk about my VIN plate. Now, this VIN plate is mounted to the dash somewhere in about this area. And normally, as I mentioned earlier, it would pop up. Because this is rounded, I don't want to take a chance. So I'm going to move this a little bit more inboard where it normally would go. And I want it on a nice flat piece. There's enough material on the VIN plate. Now I'm not going to try to put this onto the dash. What I am thinking of doing is just taking the piece, putting it over the dash pad the way it is, and let's push that in. And then we take the trim piece and we place this in where it's going to be. And you can see we're pretty darn close, right? So what we can end up doing is we can notch the dash pad, maybe let's say 1/4 inch, right? Let's bring that up 1/4 of an inch. We'll notch the dash pad 1/4 of an inch where this is so this can slide deeper into the dash. And then with this piece in place and the trim piece in place, we'll have a nice exposure of the VIN number without having to do any slicing of the VIN or slicing of the dash. I think that is the way to do it. This is why we test fit everything. So I'm going to cut the dash, cut a tab out, 1/4 inch tab, so this then slips inside the dash 1/4 of an inch. That'll bring this up here, and that'll be all the clearance I need to have the VIN number showing. And then, like I said, we can also then take this and start to identify the screw holes. Well, I think as Inspector Clouseau says, case solved. I think that's the perfect option. Notch the dash about 1/4 of an inch. That allows the entire VIN number to slip up. The trim piece is sitting exactly where it's going to sit in the car when it's finished. So it covers all of that metal. So all I expose is the VIN, which is exactly what I wanted. So what we're going to do next is with this rubber seal in place, we make sure that this is exactly where we want it. And then once we know where we want everything, we're going to take it all apart. I'm going to find the original holes that are in the cowl for the trim piece. We're going to notch the dash to expose those holes. We'll put it all back together again and I'll throw those screws in, but I'm gonna do them from inside, pretending that there's a glass here, right? So we have, because we're gonna need to do that eventually. But we get all these in, get it all assembled with the seal, no glass, everything in, exactly the way we want, and then we just blow it all apart again. And then that is the way to go. And as I said before, everyone, I mean, this unfortunately is part of the process. You have to assemble it, make sure everything's gonna fit, and the way to do it is make sure your seal's in here, because this is gonna change the angle. If this seal wasn't here, you can see immediately, and again, I've got it in there good, there we go. If this seal is not there, it changes how this sits in the car, as you can see. And you would never want to try to do your alignment without that seal in place, because that needs to be in place for this piece to sit right, so we understand where everything goes. So again, as I mentioned, let's take this apart, let's cut our reveals, and let's get this dash in so we can start working on the interior. Okay, so what did I do? I took everything out, I pulled the dash back slightly, located the holes where the trim piece goes. I then used my Sharpie and marked the dash, because it does, the Sharpie does at least leave a mark behind. I marked it, cut them, and then I just trimmed them out. Now, don't take too much off because you run the risk of exposing the cut. Only take a little bit out, put the dash back in, and keep doing that until you've exposed the holes, which are right there. And that way there, now you know that that's going to fit. Then, of course, with the rubber in, I put the trim piece in, and then I used my screwdriver. I was able to easily locate the holes, get the screws in, and get it the way you just saw it a few seconds ago. Now, at the same time, as I showed you earlier, not only did I notch the holes, but I also notched where the VIN goes. So now the VIN simply sticks right there. I could probably squeeze the aluminum just to really hold it in place. But really, once that's in, and then of course the seal is there, and then of course then the trim piece goes in, which is right like that, that's not going anywhere. So this, I think, is exactly what I wanted. I need to repeat this process on the other side. Well, as I mentioned, rinse and repeat. So basically, we've got the trim piece in, we cut tabs into the dash just to expose the holes. The screws went in super easy. They fit up against the rubber seal just like this. So again, that's why I recommend putting the rubber seal in. I'm going to take this all apart. I'm going to attach this dash directly to the cowl using those other holes that you saw on the cowl. So we're going to screw right through the vinyl, secure this in place. Once that's in place, we can start putting the dash together. So let's take it all apart one more time and let's start putting this together. So what I've done is I've used the flat screws, push the dash in, and then I hit it with 4 screws along the top. Now, of course, you notice I didn't put any screws here because this isn't supportive enough. You have to go where there's some good support. I wanted to grab these 2 because that holds this part of the dash in. And then, of course, the one on either side holding the dash the way we want. The key is we want this piece here to sit perfectly in this corner, because this is where the trim piece goes, and we want this to be flush. So this is pushed right up against the dash, and that is the most important part. Same thing on this side. This is perfectly right along that seam, as you can see, and that's where the screws then hold the console and then the dash in. So the idea of doing this while there's no windshield in place just makes a lot of sense. So that dash is now in. So what do we turn to next? Well, what we're going to turn to next is the A-pillar pads, because those need to be drilled, and therefore I need to make a template of where the clips are. So that's part 2. Okay, so there's the driver's side pillar pad. Now, I've got the windlace on, but just temporarily, because I need to fill that gap to test a few things. So of course the windlace is going to give me some fill on the inside. Now here it is on the A pillar. Now again, there's a bit of a gap. I'm holding that gap open, but that's because that is where the windowsill is going to go in, or the seal for the window. Obviously the pillar pad's not going to be in this area when I'm putting the window in, but basically what's going to happen is that will be where the rubber seal will go, and then the pillar pad goes up against the rubber seal, and of course goes up against the windlace in the back, and that holds it flat. And that's how the A pillar goes. Let me show you how I put it in. So once again, I'm out of the shot. Now the pillar pads, so this is obviously now the passenger side, right? So it runs down the passenger pillar. This curved edge goes against the dash, and this flat edge goes against the top. Now if you noticed in the other video, I had to trim this, and the reasoning is because of the convertible, there's a rather large sun visor clip because it has to also integrate into the hood or into the roof, so I had to trim it, but we'll get there in a minute. Now, on the back, you're going to see a number of slots in the piece. Now, I did not use the slot at the bottom because this is where it's going to be into the dash anyways. I didn't think we needed to have a clip that far down. So I concentrated on these 3 clips here. So first thing you have to do is you have to cut the vinyl just behind the steel. There's a steel plate there. So I'm cutting just behind it to get under that steel plate. There's that steel plate. And then number 2, and then number 3. Now, the clips they give you insert in, and they go under the steel. So there's a piece of steel there. That's not on the rubber. Okay, so this, as you can see, I did not get under the steel. You can see how that's flimsy. That's not what we want. You have to get, there's a piece of steel back there. You have to get behind it. There we go. Now you can see that is behind the steel. You can actually see the steel coming through. So now we've got the 3 clips in. All we need to do now is take this to the car. We're going to insert this, put it just like the other side. And the good news is these edges here, I can just literally wiggle, and they're going to scratch my paint on my A pillar, and they're going to make a mark where they are. Now the good news is they're adjustable. They can move up and down slightly. So that gives me the ability then to make final adjustments. So there's the passenger pillar pad installed. So again, like I said, it wraps nicely around the dash. There's a bit of a gap all the way up, but again, that's going to be filled with the seal for the windshield. On the other side, this gap here is also then going to be filled by the windlace. I did have to do a little bit of work to trim that A pillar into this bracket, but we also know that that bracket is for the convertible, and that makes it a little bit different than a regular A pillar, so it needed a little bit of a trim to get in there. Now a trick was when I placed the first clip against the body of the car and I scratched the paint and I drilled it, I then snapped the first one in, which brings the second one closer. And then the second one you wiggle and scratch, make a mark, pull the pillar out, drill it, put the bottom one, snap, snap, and then the third one, it also then is closer, and then you can just mark it and drill it as well. Well, sorry for that. That was longer than I thought, but we covered a lot of things, right? That VIN number being a new dash pad for a 68, by trimming it the way we did, we're able to get that VIN exposed just by that trim piece. The other thing, a little trick, is to put the seal in for the window when you're fitting everything, because that will play a part in the trim. And if you don't have that seal in and you're trying to get this done, you know, trying to align the holes, they're never going to align. So this way here, they're aligned properly. Now, the other thing is I've screwed the dash pad in, so this is permanently installed now. Yes, I will be putting the windshield on after the dash pad is in, but you know what? There's a lot of videos out there that do this, so I am going to continue in that vein as well. So where are we going to go? Well, the A pillars are in, but now we're going to take them right back out, because of course they're going to get in the way if I put the windshield in, but now they can just snap in, they snap out, so we can just store them. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and I'll be back in the next day or two, and let's get this instrument cluster in, let's get all of this wiring tucked up away, and like I said, let's get this steering wheel on. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll see you then.